In visually analyzing a work of art along with uncovering its iconographic and iconological significance, a greater level of understanding for the entire piece is gathered by the viewer. This includes a stronger mental grasp of the physical copy of the work of art at hand, as well as a deeper comprehension for the society in which the piece was produced. Queen Nefertari being led by Isis is a perfect example of this notion. The wall painting, made on a medium of tempera on paper, was created during the reign of Ramesses II in the New Kingdom, around 1279 to 1213 BC in Egypt. Although a watercolor copy of the piece is now housed in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, in Gallery 135 under accession number 30.4.142, the piece was originally painted on the walls of Queen Nefertari's tomb in the Valley of the Queens. Analysis revealing the painting's visual elements, iconography, and iconology will now take place below. As stated previously, this will enhance the viewer or reader's overall understanding of the work, which in turn will establish the theory of Egyptian society as progressive and therefore the art they produce as expressive of modern idea and thought. Visual analysis of Queen Nefertari being led by Isis permits a better cognizance for the viewer on the concept of Egyptian art and culture as revolutionary in its particularly insinuating composition and use of representative colors. The watercolor copy of the original tomb painting depicts the queen, pictured left, holding hands and walking with the aforementioned goddess Isis. Queen Nefertari is painted in white, somewhat transparent dress, tied in red sash on the waist, and adorned with ceremonial headdress, bracelets, broad neck piece, and makeup around the eyes. Goddess Isis is painted with the headpiece of a disc with two horns on its sides, wearing a red beaded worked sheath dress, and seen holding a staff in one hand. Both feminine figures in twisted perspective are the same size, despite one being of royal status and the other godly, and thus are not drawn in hierarchical scaling, a technique that was often apparent in ancient Egyptian works of art. This observation reveals the radical illustration of Queen Nefertari by her Egyptian followers in a similar, if not exact same, distinction or importance as a god. Additionally, in terms of composition, is the absence of the queen's husband, Ramesses II, not just in this piece but in all the scenes painted on her burial tomb. The museum label accompanying this copy at the Met reads that this indicates Nefertari's high status, hence the ability for her direct interaction with deities. This only further supports the theory on Egyptian art conveying less traditional and unconventional ideas by challenging historically relevant notions of gender and power in society. Such concepts are also made clear in the pigments comprising the entire work of art. While Nefertari is painted in a realistic manner with light reddish-brown skin, Isis is painted in a yellow goldish flesh tone. In accordance with the Ancient History Encyclopedia Foundation, the goddess's coloring was achieved by mixing arsenic trisulfide and done to any and all painted deities to reflect the Egyptian belief that the skin of gods was in fact gold. The presentation of Isis as godlike in her gold skin tone and Nefertari as human in her brown-red hue, yet chosen portrayal of the two as alike, establishes the argument stated above. This is because the coloring of both figures indicates a difference in their worship by the people of Egypt, but as made obvious in this analysis, does not create a difference in their painted relation, with each holding hands in union with the other. It should be noted also that on the upper portion and lower right portion of the tomb piece are hieroglyphics painted in color. These will be examined in closer detail for iconographic significance in the following section. However, to conclude this segment, it is clear that analysis of this visual composition and coloring of the artwork both contribute to the gaining in knowledge by the viewer of Egyptian society and its artistic creations as progressive in overall conceptual design. Similar to the way in which analysis of a work of art allows for a greater understanding of the subject matter is the way in which determination of this piece's iconographic significance assists in the notion of ancient art and culture in Egypt as one of modernity. Touched upon earlier, this is initially recognizable in the use of color in Queen Nefertari being led by Isis, and specifically in its symbolism. While a mix of standard brown paint and red was used to achieve the complexion of the Egyptian male, females were often painted in lighter tones of yellow and white mixes to represent their time spent indoors. This is important to address because this means that Nefertari is progressively painted like that of a man, and thus is symbolic of her capabilities as a feminine figure. The concept of her great power is also expressed in the hieroglyphics carved around her form, one being the queen's title and epithet as "for whom the sun shines for," a phrase also inscribed for Nefertari on the facade of the small temple at Abu Simbel, represented by the oval outline of golden coloring inside with the Bennu bird and other emblematic symbols in the columns right atop her head. This, along with other hieroglyphics on goddess Isis's part that translates to, "Come, O great king's wife Nefertari, beloved of Mut, I have made a place for you in the necropolis," depicts the queen's importance as an entity that even the divine deities and elemental sun must work to serve. The reference to Mut is also symbolically present in the twin high-plumed crown on Queen Nefertari, as it is representative of the beneficial goddess Mut, or translation as Mother in Egyptian, in art from the Old Kingdom. It can comparatively be seen on the sculpted figure Amin-Re in crown, with tall plumes, housed in the Brooklyn Museum and attached here. The reference of headdress, as symbolic in design and reflective of the idea that women are strong, able, otherworldly beings, is also visible in that of the crown of Isis. She wears bovine horns with a solar disk between them, atypical to the goddess Hathor, and now Isis, as she assimilates traits relative to her, like the headdress of the bronze sculpture Seated Isis at the Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum. In discovering the iconographic significance of this artwork's color and object symbolism, the thought of Egypt as progressive in appraisal of the female sex is reinforced. This impression will now be explored in regards to iconological significance for the same piece of discussion. Comparably to how addressment of the work of art's iconography permits mastery and apprehension of the piece, is how discovery of its iconological significance further develops the theory of progression and modernity in ancient Egyptian art and culture. This reference to the terms of society in which the piece was produced can be categorized in three distinctions: societal, political, and economic. For the first classification, that being societal, the notion of an advanced civilization arises in treatment of equality based on one's gender identification and ruling power. This is due to the solitary portrayal of Queen Nefertari without pictorial evidence of her husband's image on the tomb paintings, as well as her direct interaction with the goddess Isis despite her being of mortal descent. These depictions, or rather the lack of one depiction and the presentation of the other, reinforce the vision of Egypt as a progressive land that artistically and socially communicates the equal manner in which individuals and their population of both the male and female sex are treated. This leads to the political importance of Queen Nefertari being led by Isis as a physical representation of the prestige and governmental potential held by a woman figure. Such a concept is upheld by the history of female predecessors in Egypt, Amiz Nefertari and Nefertiti, wife of Akhenaten, who both figured prominently during the New Kingdom, and King Hatshepsut in her reign during the 18th dynasty. The fact that Nefertari was not the first queen of such high status, yet still painted to such a great level of respect, emphasizes the aforementioned perception. This perception of Egyptian society and its artwork as progressive includes its relation to the economic category. Not only is this due to the exquisitely detailed paintings covering the tomb walls composed of beautiful and rare pigments, but also the overall architectural stature of the structure as a whole. References of the build, deemed one of the finest tombs ever created by ancient Egypt's master craftsmen, and its art illustrated across over 520 square meters, establishes the financial state of prosperity during this period. It is this state of ability that indicates the current state of the economy during the creation of both the tomb and the paintings on its walls. Overall, having identified the piece's iconological significance, it is clear that the belief or argument of Egyptian society and art as advanced is upheld.